What's going on, guys? Richie Schnyderite here, Nittany Nation publisher. I'm joined by Eric Lammers, Nittany Nation recruiting analyst, James Franklin protege for some people. What's going on, Eric?
Not much, Richie. How are you doing?
I can't complain, man. This class is done, it seems like, and I think we can kind of rest for a little bit.
That's right. At least one day to celebrate the signing class, right? I mean, today's kind of like that Super Bowl, like I said, for the personnel staff, and it's obviously a reason to celebrate because it's a lot of hard work and hours that kind of go into today, and what everybody sees today with the signing day and all the announcements and everything is great, but I mean the amount of hours and just days and time that really goes into getting to this point and getting these kids across the finish line for these staffs is truly remarkable. So it's pretty fun to wrap it all up and sit here and talk about it for sure.
So for people that don't know, Eric's obviously a recruiting analyst for the site, but he also worked under James Franklin for 5-6 years, I want to say.
I only worked for Coach Franklin for 2.
Oh,
he was
okay,
only
two,
at Penn
two
State.
of
Yeah,
them.
he was only at Penn State he was only at Vanderbilt for 2 years until then he left for that I worked for him. I think he was at Vanderbilt for 3 years total, but 2 years until he went to Penn State.
So you dealt with him when it comes to signing day and stuff like that. What's it like under James Franklin for signing day?
Yeah, I mean it's a spectacle for sure. I mean it's a day for celebration. What you see kind of now at Penn State, where they put the big board up and they put the names on the board and they celebrate, and they usually have somebody that announces all that, almost like a game show host, and they would bring the cheerleaders in, they'd bring the band in, they'd bring in the mascot and different things and just celebrate it. We would usually stream some of the announcements there. I saw today where he was doing a live stream, which is really cool. And but it's really to him, because recruiting is such a big thing for Coach Franklin. It's one of the lifebloods of the program. And like I said earlier, when you get to this day, he really wants to celebrate it. He believes in celebrating it, not for, just the staff, but the family, the kids and everything like that. So it's a big day for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear he loves recruiting. Is it just nonstop for him? Does he ever just take a break a little bit or?
No, not really. I mean, he really is always trying to get those constant updates. He wants to know what's going on with kids. If you're not checking in with the kids, somebody else probably is. So it's constantly always has to be on your mind in his world. And, coaches out there have different philosophies and different things, the way they want to attack it. And you see different philosophies are successful, but Coach Franklin has his way of doing it. And it's been obviously tried and true and successful. And, but yeah, it's nonstop for him.
So heading into the day, Penn State had 25 commits. They're down to 23 signees. One kid didn't sign. What's the scoop there between, obviously Roy flipped, but what's the scoop with Mills right now?
Yeah, Mills, more just, he's JUCO transferred from Lackawanna. Anytime that you're going to transfer into a school, you have to make sure that you have so many hours coming with you just for the eligibility issues, stay on your clock. There's a natural clock that you have to stay on. And that's just really where they're at with him, with Tyrese. It's not anything necessarily, against him. It's just he was at a certain spot in the hours being counted that would come into Penn State. So they need to make sure that he's going to have enough so that way he is eligible. And so they're just going to hold off until February to sign him, see where he's at with all of that, and then make it happen. But they definitely want him. They still plan on signing him in February. They just wanted to give him a little extra time to make sure that all those classes were going to come with him.
And then the other guy that we were just talking about, Andre Roy, supposedly we all thought he was going to go to USC. Then he just flipped to Maryland last second. Very weird. What happened there?
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with the staff recently and they felt confident, but they didn't really know, I guess, for sure. Because obviously the St. Francis kids, you never really know until that NLI actually comes in.
Yeah.
And I think what ended up happening was that, all the attention was on the most recent trip to USC. Obviously, that's where he was at, and everybody thought that's potentially where he could end up. But in the end, those guys in Maryland, they wanted to stay home, and I guess they do a good job. Loxley does a good job of making sure that he puts up a perimeter around some of those dudes, and he did it with this guy, and he also did it with the guy from South Carolina. They flipped last second too.
I
so
saw that, and then the Virginia Tech running back as well. If you're Penn State, do you kind of just say if you see St. Francis and you're just kind of fuck you, you guys aren't sending any kids this way at this point, between Barham, between Moore, between Andre Roy flipping last minute, classes in the past, it's kind of like a little shade, I think, a little bit, right?
I think it's definitely one of those things that you have to kind of navigate. It's definitely frustrating when you're on Penn State side, and I've been on that side too, when you're constantly trying to build that relationship with that school and with that coach. For us, it wasn't necessarily St. Francis, it was another school, but when I was at Vanderbilt. But when you're constantly trying to, develop that relationship, and you're taking these coaches and these kids at their word, and there's always a chance that maybe it doesn't come your way. I mean, that's frustrating, and it does make you want to kind of move on from that. From that relationship, and kind of, like you said, just say enough's enough. Why we keep putting ourselves through this? But at the end of the day, you're always going to be trying to find, really good football players that can come and help your program. And if that's where they're at, maybe you just keep on going and keep trying to find one that you can break through with. But you always are obviously going to have to be wary of that. I mean, it sucks for sure, but it's part of the business, I guess.
Yeah. So now, obviously, a huge class, number 6 in the country. 23 total signees right now. Who's your favorite kid in the class? And do not give me a cop-out answer like denied Dennis Sutton.
I mean, you could obviously go through the entire class, I think, top to bottom, and make an argument for a lot of these guys and why you could pick them. Obviously there is the obvious ones there with, Drew Lar and Nicholas Singleton and Caden Saunders and, denied Dennis Sutton. All those guys are pretty good players, and you look for them to be, early impact type players for Penn State. One of my favorite players that I've really become fond of here, though, is Malik Mcneil, the big tackle out of New York. I just think that he is such a rare specimen at 6'8", 340 pounds. And, he's got the physical traits that NFL scouts are going to drool over when they see him. Now, whether or not he, develops at the position, does he have the mean streak inside of him, for what it takes to play at the next level? That's all going to be, development on Penn State side, and see how they they can do with him. But, when you just are looking at the kid and when you watch his film, it's hard not to fall in love with the athletic traits that he possesses.
So now, other than him, I know you put out your, what we call it, superlatives for the class.
Yes,
other than him, who's your most underrated player in this class?
I think one guy that definitely probably doesn't get enough love, though. I don't know if you can truly be underrated when you're a 4-star, but Abdul Carter, he's a line, for a school, known as linebacker U. He could be next in line there at Penn State to be one of the next ones, because the way he just plays, he's fast, he's physical, he closes. He's built just like you want him as a traditional box backer, but he can move and he can close with such speed that he's one of my favorite ones to watch for sure too.
So now, personally, I know I've seen a couple of these guys, so I just wanted to touch on this. What are your thoughts on Caleb Artis? I've seen him in person a few times, working out with the trainer over in New Jersey, New York area that I know. Personally, I think he's a hell of a defensive tackle. I think he's super underrated, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I mean, I liked him. I think when I was watching him, I was kind of maybe wanted to see a little bit more out of him, just in terms of, production. I think that he does a good job of coming out of his stance, coming off the ball. Down in the trenches, the biggest thing, especially, is just always, hands. How good are you with your hands, and how violent can you be down there? And I liked him. I think I had him. I was trying to go through this class and almost like power rank them. In terms of like how I would see them immediate impact, their film and different things like that. I think he's, in that middle of the pack guys. He's got a chance, but he probably have a few other of those guys on defense rated higher than him.
So who are some of those guys? I know obviously they're all ranked 4-star or higher at this point.
Yeah, Zayn Durant's one also that I'm pretty high on in terms of his abilities. Now he's on the smaller side when you're looking at his dimensions. 6'1", 255 pounds. He plays mostly on the edge at the high school level, beating tackles more with speed than anything. But I think he more projects probably to an interior defensive lineman at the next level. Okay. He's got long arms. He changes direction really, really well for a lineman. So he'd be one that I have up there pretty high. It's going to be really to become, when he gets into the Penn State strength and conditioning program, and he goes from 255, 260 now to up to 290, 295. Does he keep that change of direction? Does he keep the athleticism when he gets to that size? If he can, I would expect him to be one of those guys that just wreaks havoc in the middle for years to come for Penn State.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Quick Wi-Fi issue. My Wi-Fi kind of stinks, but whatever. Anyway, Eric was just told us about Zayn Durant, and then who else is it that you like in this class?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Omari Evans. Right now, he's kind of pegged as an athlete by Rivals. Where does he end up? Wide receiver? Does he end up at defensive back? He plays quarterback for his high school team, or he did play quarterback for his high school team this senior year. He's a pretty versatile athlete. I think ultimately where he's going to end up for Penn State is at the wide receiver position. I think that's at least where they're going to start him out at. I'm a big fan of his because he's got such elite track times behind him. He's a state qualifier for the long jump. And then he's also got some straight line speed in the 100-meter dash. So I really like him. A couple of those athletes that Penn State signed in this class that are pegged that way by that Rivals really have a chance to be pretty special. Mekhi Flowers, Cam Miller, Christian Driver. Which way those guys ultimately go, whether it's defensive back or it's wide receiver, I think the Penn State staff's going to let it ultimately come down to them and just see how they do in camp and which one becomes more natural to them where they can excel. But I think all those guys are good football players, and Coach Franklin has a way of doing that, or he kind of seeks out guys that are just versatile athletes, whether it's because they played the quarterback position at high school and because the high school team just puts their best athlete at quarterback and lets them do their thing.
Yeah, of course.
Or whatever it may be, but he has a way of finding those guys in the past, and then they turn out to be really, really good ball players for him. So those guys are some guys to watch for sure.
A little bit, but like what's Franklin's philosophy with these athlete types? Is it kind of like we have you pegged for this one right away, or is it you kind of pick one if you're close, kind of close in terms of talent on both sides, or is it just?
I think for the most part, they will give the kid, the kind of the option to kind of choose, right? Unless they know it's so clear cut that the kid's going to be better at wide receiver, he's going to be better at DB because of one of his skill sets. But I think he'll actually let the kid come in, work out either side of the ball, whichever one's his best. But, ultimately you're going to want to make that move, into the position, whether it's on the defensive side or the offensive side sooner than later, because time is of the essence. So, whether it's you come in that first camp and you work out at wide receiver, and maybe that's just not where it's the best fit, and it's ultimately safety, I think he'll make that move sooner than later. But I think he gives each kid that opportunity.
So now we didn't talk about him at all, actually, I guess, really. Drew Lahr. How good can he actually be? I know you have him probably ranked higher than what Rivals has him ranked. I think I kind of agree with you too.
Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's obviously one of those hot topic issues, and I have no problem defending that I think that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I think it's obviously one of those things where, everybody has their preference. Everybody's seen different guys and likes different guys, but I think that he's, that prototypical NFL type quarterback. He's got the size, he's got the arm strength. He can make all the throws. He's not just a statue back there. That's what, sometimes people maybe think when they see that 6'4", 6'5", 220-pound quarterback back there. He's got enough athleticism really on the edge to make some things happen if you let him get out there. So, I think he's legit. I think he's easily one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this class. And I think Penn State fans should be him.
I know we talked about it on the boards. We talked about it a little like off camera. Who's your number 1 quarterback though? If he's number 2, who's 1?
Well, quite frankly, it was him. It really is him. I had, obviously, Quinn Ewers was there when I first went through and did all my rankings back in the spring. I had Quinn Ewers up there, and then I had Drew move up into that number 2 pro style quarterback. But I think that the kid down in Texas, Cade Klubnik, who's committed to Clemson, obviously there's a good case there for why he could be number 1 as well. It really just, again, it comes down to your personal preference. Do you want a guy that's a little bit more mobile? What are you looking for exactly? The competition that he went against in high school. But I would make the case if I was in a rankings meeting, I would make the case that, Drew deserves to be number 1.
Now let me ask you this, since you've been part of his staff before, does Franklin and like the rest of the staff, do they pay attention to these rankings at all? Or is it kind of just like, screw them, like we have our own evals?
I think that to your last point, we have our own evals. They're always going to trust their own evals for sure, but I definitely think that rankings matter to them because if nothing else, it's obviously a good optics when you have when you have a highly rated class and you have a bunch of 4 stars and 5 stars, and if you believe so much in your ability to evaluate, then you believe that the people that are doing the rankings for Rivals and the other sites should be on your seeing what you're seeing. So obviously you want them to be ranked like that. So they definitely matter to him. He definitely tracks that. He wants to know when guys are updated in the rankings, where they're going. Are they 4-star? Are they 5-star? They going up? They going down at the position? Whatever it may be. He tracks all that, and it goes back to because recruiting is just so important to him.
Now, I don't know if you had time to look at it yet. That 2023 class, it's off to a hot start. I think they're number 4 in the country right now. top Virginia kid, two top Virginia kids, and two top PA kids. What stands out about this class so far? I'm sorry, 3 PA? I forget what it is. What is it, 3 PA kids?
No, I think it's two. I think it's two Virginia, two
right, yeah.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, you got it right. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be another strong class, obviously. I think they're putting a lot of the focus, obviously, early. I think they have the 2 tight end commits, and then they have the offensive line commit, and then the Lamont Payne, right? I think is the other one.
Yeah, the kid out of West PA.
So, it's a good class already together. I think Birchmeyer's obviously a really good interior lineman that they've got committed to them. And I think they'll just continue to build on that. It's going to be interesting how they attack the quarterback position. It's not going to be an easy position for them to recruit. I don't think when you have somebody coming in like Drew Lar that's got so much hype. It's not necessarily easy as other teams in the nation have found out. When you have that one elite guy, it's not like a lot of other ones want to come and just sit behind him. So what will they do at that position? Will they continue to add, some tight ends? I think they're looking like they might want to add another one there, a third one, which would be an interesting development. But other than that, they have a lot of good talent, a lot of good targets. Obviously, it's early. You never know what's going to happen a year from now. I mean, it could look completely different. But, a big thing for them, obviously, in the spring and then in the summer is they're going to get these kids on campus and get to know them and see them live and in camp. And that's, the camp evaluation is a huge piece for Coach Franklin and his staff as well. He loves to see guys live. He loves to see what they can do. They put them through some different testing. And so they love to see that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it's obviously shaping up to be a good class. And you expect that from Coach Franklin and his staff not to, let up any. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting one. Now, I know one thing we haven't touched on yet is the transfer portal. I know you've talked to the staff a little bit about it and who they're kind of looking at and talking to and stuff like that. What are Franklin's thoughts on the portal? I know it's probably changed based on the years just because of how much of an impact it's having on college football at this point.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously the transfer portal when I was working for Coach Franklin wasn't even a thing, right? So I mean, and obviously transfers were far more few and far between back even in 2012, 2013, because guys had to go sit out a year, and not a lot of guys didn't want to do that. But now with with the rules the way they've changed and going into the portal becoming such a hot thing, it's probably one of those things that you just have to embrace. Really, I read something pretty interesting the other day. I was talking about how NFL teams that build off of free agency normally don't find success the same ways that the ones that build through the draft and build through traditional development. And so now, is that going to translate? How does that translate down into college? Because essentially what you're seeing is free agency versus, the draft. Now, granted, you're not drafting when you're recruiting, obviously, because you don't just get a pick, as you have guys that flip and do different things like that. But that's where you're going to be developing versus going and finding some of these older guys that are more plug and play. I think that there's a good balance to be found there. I think that you have to kind of embrace it because, you're not always going to, it's hard to hit on a class, like your hit rate on a class in terms of how are they going to be successful. You're probably looking at something like 60%. That's probably pretty good, 60, 70%. So if you're going to miss on 30% of your targets or 30% of the guys that you sign, well, you're going to need to fill those guys. So now, rather than having to fill them with other high school kids, you can go out and fill it with guys that have proven film at the college level. Now, people that leave are guys that are leaving colleges or that are transferring from colleges. A lot of times are leaving for a reason. It's not like they're not leaving one college because they were the man and going to another college to be the man. Some might with this new NLI stuff take advantage of that, but for the most part, they're leaving with some warts. If they're leaving a college program, it's because either they were buried on the depth chart, they've got some issues off the field, they got some issues academically. There's something there that's pushing them to leave that program. So you have to be able to filter through all of that. I do think that there's the merit, I know we've had some people on the board that weren't so pleased with the fact that they offered the Cornell offensive lineman. I think that actually that's a pretty good honey hole for programs because that kid's going to be smart. He's got a good head on his shoulders. That he's got a work ethic that's, very mature beyond his years. So if you can go into a place like the Ivy League and you can find the best of the best, where you can go down into FCS schools or group of 5 schools and find these kids that are the best of the best. And those are the ones that you're bringing in. I think then that's kind of how you got to do it. You're almost going to treat, it sucks to say, but you're almost going to treat some of those lower level schools almost like a farm system.
Yeah, I think the only issue there is it's tough because fans mostly just saw a guy like Eric Wilson come from Harvard, and he's been okay, I guess, at best.
Sure.
And they
Yeah.
see that, then they see Spencer Rawling get like kind of like a mutual agreement of parting ways between those two, and it's like, all right, well, that's two back-to-back Ivies that kind of like shit the bed.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a good point. And I mean, it's never gonna, and it's obviously a huge step up in competition when you're talking about going against Ivy League to the Big Ten. And so you got to be able to trust your evaluation and know what you're doing, I guess. There, it was the Ivy League was a good honey hole for us at Vanderbilt, particularly because there was so much academic standards. But at the same time, we didn't get any alignment. We didn't bring any alignment down there, so we had more of like the skill positions and things like that we were recruiting. So I don't know. It's interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the whole process is crazy. You see offensive linemen, like look at FIU, for example. Miles Frazier is choosing between, he's a 1-11 FIU team, now choosing between Ohio State, Florida State, and
LSU. Yep.
Yeah, like what the hell?
And then,
the other line,
Penn State jumped in last night with an offer. So
it's insane. And then like their wide receivers going to Arizona State or somewhere else over there. If they're all getting Power 5 offers, but it's a 1-11 team, so it's like, what the hell is going on? But it is crazy to see how offensive linemen kind of are, no matter how they do at their previous school, it almost looks like every single one is transferring up a level, which is crazy to say.
Well, I mean, if you're I would tell you this, and this is 100% fact. If you're an offensive lineman and if you're a defensive lineman, if you're a lineman and you go into that portal and you have starts under your belt, you're going to be a hot commodity. Every personnel department in America is tracking for those type of guys because offensive line in general is such a crapshoot. You have 16, 17 scholarships allotted to that position. Yeah. You got to get 8 or 9 guys that can be a rotational piece for you, or give you your depth. But there's a lot of misses on the offensive line over the years. A lot of programs will look and say, yeah, we've missed a lot on offensive line. And so when a kid that goes into the portal, regardless if he's from FIU or he's from Ohio State, if he's got, starts under his belt, they're coming after him.
Yeah, that's wild to say. And then I guess just moving on from this, the last thing I have for you, Manny Diaz. I know we talked to recruits. You talked to a couple of them. You kind of got their reactions. They were all pretty positive, it seemed like. But what's your reaction to the news?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a pretty big hire for Coach Franklin and the staff to go down there and get a guy like that, because every time, obviously Coach Franklin, obviously his background too is offense. Now he's a great CEO, manager of an organization, and he always is going to know what's going on within his organization. But if you can go get a guy like Manny Diaz, who has been a defensive coordinator, been a head coach, and you can now have a guy like that that's going to lead your defense, and you can trust the fact that you have somebody that's almost like another co-CEO that can focus on the defense. That just takes so much more off of his plate. And plus he's got a proven track record, of being a good defensive signal caller and developing at that position. So to me, that's a tremendous hire to replace somebody like Coach Pry, who was so integral to Coach Franklin's success and, great friend of Coach Franklin, to go and replace him with somebody like Diaz. I think that's a home run hire.
And then I guess the funny one I got for you, what's your favorite or your craziest Coach Franklin story? You gotta have something pretty good.
I don't know if it's crazy, but it's probably one of my more fondest memories of Coach Franklin. When I first started at Vanderbilt, he brought me on as a volunteer assistant. And so that means I was not making any money other than what I can make on the side and doing things like that. And I had some odd jobs here and there, but he was always very good to me. I would go get him lunch and he would let me keep the change, or I would go, get his shoe shine. And he'd let me keep that change. But one time he had me come over and set up his patio furniture with him, just me and him. So I'm this young guy, 24 years old, 25 years old. I'm over at this, Division I head coach's house, just me and him. We're putting together patio furniture, and we're just basically shooting the shit. And so that was one of the more fondest memories of my time with him, because I never would have imagined that's what I would ever be in that situation. Yeah. And then that's where I was at. So that was pretty cool.
So he doesn't think about recruiting 24/7.
No. I think even then that day we probably were just more worried about how the hell we were supposed to put these chairs and tables together than we were recruiting at that time.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the guy's got a ton of money. I'm surprised he didn't have someone do it for him.
Hell, now he might have that. Now he might. This is obviously in year 1 or 2.
Extension. I mean,
yeah. So now he might have that happening. But back then it was, call up the volunteer recruiting assistant, have him come over and do that. But it was awesome, and he's always been really great to me. And obviously I appreciate him a lot.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Eric. I can't thank you enough for this. hell of a class for Penn State, number 6 right now. I think it's probably going to stay there pending Jackson State getting about 25 more commits.
That's
But
wild.
yeah, I mean, that's all I got for you. All right, guys, stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button down below. Get more Penn State content. Eric's going to have a ton of articles over the next, I don't even know how long, over the next few months, weeks, whatever. We'll have all kinds of Penn State scoop team news coming up. We're going to have a bunch of interviews with the Arkansas guys, bowl game, and that's pretty much it, right? New Year's, bowl game, maybe a February signing day for one kid. I don't know. But all right, thanks a lot, Eric.
Hey, thank you, Richie. Have a good rest. All right.
Yep.